When it comes to the 1980s, there isn't much that defines the decade more than Police Academy. From the cast to the vibe to the sequels that kept coming every single year, the Police Academy franchise was pure 80s. Its legacy has lived on ever since, for both good and bad reasons. And today, for this special anniversary Culture Slice chart show video, we're heading back to the Academy one more time to rank all 7 films from the series, the highs, the lows, and the creamy middles. Attention! Hi, I'm Culture Slice, and I'm ready to admit that I have a Police Academy problem. If I notice one of the films playing on TV, I have to stop everything and watch it, no matter how many times I've seen it or whatever else I'm supposed to be doing. It's definitely an issue. 2 years ago, that obsession inspired No Laughing Matter, the first series of videos on this channel, which told the story of the rise and fall of Police Academy across the 80s and 90s. Those videos helped make Culture Slice a reality. It was all thanks to Police Academy. So to celebrate our channel's 2nd birthday, we're getting back in the saddle one more time for a special video tackling some very serious business. We're going to rank the Police Academy movies. We'll be counting down the 7 films from the franchise, from number 7 to that coveted number 1 spot, based on 4 scoring criteria. There might be thrills, there will almost certainly be spills, there could even be controversy. Anyway, how do you go about ranking the Police Academy movies? We're doing it properly for our 2nd anniversary video, using a quartet of highly scientific, totally objective, and in no way arbitrary metrics. First up, of course, is the public vote. We've been canvassing Culture Slice viewers for your Police Academy rankings over the last few months. Culture Slice Towers has been struggling to cope with all of the mail. We've combined your picks to come up with the people's top 7. Thanks so much to everyone who shared their picks. Hopefully you can prove that democracy does work sometimes.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Democracy simply doesn't work.
Next metric, my own rankings. After spending an unhealthy amount of time covering Police Academy for this channel, I sat down once again and revisited all of the films from the series with fresh eyes and a goldfish by my side. The third metric, quality of the cast. Because in a franchise like this, when you never quite knew who'd turn up from one film to the next, the right mix of officers on patrol was a vital component to keeping things above water. And last, but almost certainly not least, comes the ranking for vibe and rewatchability. Because some of the real joy of Police Academy is catching an installment on TV randomly out of nowhere. That indefinable quality that made a movie fun to hang out with on VHS. When it comes to rewatching, it's the vibe that can cover up a multitude of comedy sins, even when the material is, basic? Yes, the joke is that he's fat. We've ranked every film across these 4 categories, with the top pick each time getting 7 points and the last one getting 1 point. The maximum total points available today is 28, the lowest is 4. The calculators have been on fire here at Culture Slice Towers. Am I taking this all very seriously for a video about Police Academy? Why yes I am. So while there's Moonlight and music and Mahoney and Callahan and Zed, let's face the music and slowly fall into a swimming pool. And we're going to start tonight's proceedings with the film that has crash landed into 7th place. And though there are some surprises along the way, this first result might not shock too many of you. Number 7. Taking into account the criteria for this video, my perspective on some of the 7 Police Academy movies might well have shifted somewhat in the last few years. There's one opinion that will likely never change, and it's why the film that lands in number 7 finished in last place in every single one of the criteria it was judged on, with a total of 4 points, the lowest possible amount available. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Police Academy Mission to Moscow. In 1994, producer Paul Maslansky, the driving force behind the franchise, finally managed to get a 7th Police Academy film released, half a decade after the last one, and without any momentum whatsoever. It hadn't been long enough since the last one to make Police Academy retro cool in any sort of way, and big screen comedy in 94 was in a very different universe to where things had been when the first film arrived in 84. But Maslansky had a gimmick ready at hand. He and director Alan Meter were taking Police Academy to Russia. Yes, to kick many buttskis. It's a strangely fascinating historical artifact, given that the idea of an American comedy being shot in Russia feels almost surreal today, but it has basically nothing else going for it. The concept of a Police Academy film in the mid-90s already felt strange, but Mission to Moscow bowled under the lowest expectations, delivering a genuinely bewildering attempt to reignite the franchise. The plot, involving Russian and American officers teaming up to stop a mafia-led video game-powered international crime ring, is a bizarre mashup of influences, whilst the humour is all over the shop, and painfully unfunny at pretty much every turn. The only arguably slightly contentious part of our bottom place ranking is the cast quality metric. Featuring the likes of Christopher Lee, Ron Perlman, and Claire Forlani in her first film role, Mission to Moscow has a seemingly strong group of new recruits, but the great Sir Christopher is basically phoning it in. Perlman's Russian mobster impression isn't his finest work, and whilst Forlani and fellow newcomer Charlie Slatter's romance is actually kind of cute, most of the material they are lumbered with is far from it. The returning cast members fare no better. The Force is the weakest it has ever been. And there is some potential. Kind of. The subplot of Lassard accidentally spending the movie living with a random Russian family should be good for a few yucks, but ends up producing one of the most painful scenes of any mainstream comedy from the last 50 years. Perhaps ever. Many of the moments involving Tackleberry and Jones are hilariously unfunny. Callahan's scenes with Perlman's mobster are equally awkward. And as for Harris, not even the great G.W. Bailey can make what he's given here work. It's a shame they couldn't reunite him with Proctor, one of a few regular characters who are certainly missed. Warner Brothers barely bothered to release it, despite whatever name value Police Academy had at the time. It is generally and rightly acknowledged as an embarrassment to a franchise that already contained 3 other films with 0% Rotten Tomatoes scores. That is how rough things got here. I can make a case for reasons to enjoy every other Police Academy in some form or other, but Mission to Moscow, historical novelty aside, I've got nothing. Even at their worst, the 80s entries had some sort of warmth to them, a group of misfits bonding through the chaos. But this one is just cold, featuring random characters stumbling around Moscow in search of something, anything. It's actually one of the saddest films I've ever seen in hindsight. No wonder Maslansky had been so keen to make an 8th one when this was the bookend of the franchise. Sadly, he never got that chance. Oh, and one more thing about the marketing. Since when are Lassard, Harris, Jones, Callahan and Tackleberry the Fearless Five from the Force?
Those Fearless Five from the Force are together again.
This is blatant false advertising. Although with a movie this awkward and unfunny, false advertising in the trailers was the least of their worries. This is truly Police Academy's darkest timeline. Number 6. In 6th place with a total of 10 points, it's Police Academy 5 Assignment Miami Beach. For the audience rankings, ASM finished only ahead of Mission to Moscow, featuring in the bottom 3 in more than 80% of your selections. Conversely, it placed in the top 3 in less than 10% of your choices. In our second No Laughing Matter video, which chronicled the slow downfall of the Police Academy industry that producer Paul Maslansky and others had built, I was pretty outspoken in my disdain for Police Academy 5. And largely, I stand by that. Assignment Miami Beach is not a good film by any stretch. It's barely more than a documentation of some people on holiday at times, and I still maintain that it comes across largely as an excuse for the cast to party on the beach in Florida. But revisiting the movie for this video, my perspective did shift in some ways. It remains in the bottom 2 of my rankings, but maybe I was slightly too harsh in the words I used to make my assessment back in that No Laughing Matter section. Even though the quality is questionable at times, very questionable at others, it is also unquestionably an easy watch, like seeing some old friends go on holiday, limbo, cocktails, pool parties and all. So the beach party vibes are good, and it scored pretty highly on the rewatchability and vibe metric. And certain occasional parts still demonstrate the series we could have got if the quality bar had been held to a slightly higher standard. Watching George Gaines get emotional as Commandant Lassard takes in the Police Officer of the Decade event being held in his honour works on a number of levels and will never not be touching to me. It's enjoyable to see such a terrific actor given more to do and be so central. The climactic water-based chase is pretty solid too, but much of the comedy is still lame on an industrial level, and there is a prevailing sense that they have essentially wasted the potential of a Summer Beach Police Academy movie. With more of the cast from the earlier films intact, there would have been far more chance of delivering something worthwhile. Ah yes, the cast. Frankly, there are major issues here. This was the first in the series without Steve Guttenberg. He was off making 3 Men and a Baby, and also doesn't feature either Bobcat Goldthwait or Tim Kazurinsky, both big losses. The new additions don't really plug the gap. Matt McCoy is a budget version replacement of Mahoney as Commandant Eric's nephew Nick Lassard. Janet Jones is fine, but never to return to the series. And Tab Thacker's house gets even more unfunny scenes as an officer here than he does in his debut as a trainee in Part 4. It is almost completely carried by Harris, Proctor and Lassard. Not a bad trio to take that responsibility, but other Police Academy episodes have them and more quality on top, so Assignment Miami Beach suffered on the cast score overall. Reading them back again, the reviews for this one were universally shocking. Not a surprise for a series like Police Academy, but they are particularly vitriolic for the only movie that director Alan Meyerson made for Paul Maslansky's franchise. The following year, Meyerson would return to the beach to direct 2 episodes of Miami Vice, but he would never have another theatrically released film. Assignment Miami Beach put paid to any ambitions he might have had there. It's not good, in fact it's far from it, and Police Academy 5's reputation will likely live on forever. I'll still give it a chance though when it turns up on my TV on an obscure channel in mid-February, keeping those summer vibes and the painful gags alive, whatever the time of year. Number 5. The film that's made it to 5th place is the first real surprise of our countdown. Batten down the comments section because it's Police Academy 3 Back in Training. Released in March of 1986, hitting number 1 at the box office and becoming the 3rd film in a row from the franchise to make over $100 million in cinemas, Back in Training was also the last Police Academy movie to avoid having a 0% Rotten Tomatoes score. But that can't stop it missing the top 4 in our chart. Your votes had Part 3 as the 3rd worst effort in the series, and watching it back again for this video, I concurred with that summation. Telling the story of Lassard and Mauser's rival academies competing to avoid closure and returning the series to its original location after Part 2's real-world exposure, Police Academy 3 saw them establish the franchise's calling card action movie-style set-piece climax, and it's pretty impressive. The film introduces Zed and Sweet Chuck to the force, but it also debuts a number of far less valuable or interesting Academy members. Back in Training also sidelines a lot of the original characters, stilting their own story arcs in the process. The love story between Mahoney and Sean Weatherly's Karen Adams offers about as much spark as Rex Banner's Banana Kaboom. Art Matrano's Mauser character reiterates just how much G.W. Bailey is missed from the series, a fact which is exposed far more here than in Part 2, and some of the attempts at humour represent the laziest efforts across the entire series. Well, some of the series. Gutenberg, Goldthwait and others have spoken about how this film felt like it was being churned out, becoming a product on the assembly line, and you can sense that at times, a movie that, in Gutenberg's words, just needed to get completed. Jerry Paris, a legendary director who had steered Happy Days amongst others, had taken the series in more of a sitcom direction with Part 2, and that feels even more pronounced here, with broad strokes and basic setups littering the movie. Back at the Academy, with a simple storyline packed with potential, Police Academy 3 ended up a real disappointment once again, and being back at home base highlights how much more sanitized things have become since 1984's first effort. Imagine how much better it could have been if it was an R-rated special, with Lassard and Harris and a genuinely interesting group of cadets battling for supremacy, rather than Mauser and his bland grey crew. Back in Training clearly isn't hated and is one of the better reviewed Police Academy films, but it's kind of just there. Apart from, one example, returning to a Police Academy film is never a total waste of time, but this one became just another day at the Academy. Number 4. Well, smack my face with a pool cue and call me Thaddeus. In 4th place is Police Academy 6 City Under Siege. By the time of its release in March of 1989, the franchise had almost completely run out of gas after 6 films in 6 years, to the point where it had become something of a punchline to many, a symbol of the overblown excess of the 1980s, which, at this stage, people were keen to move on from. But honestly, Police Academy 6 is like a real film, with a genuine twist and a narrative arc that isn't flimsier than a police commissioner's rubber nose. At least not quite anyway. Sure, the twist can be seen a mile off, and it's not exactly the usual suspects either, in construct or delivery, but it is there, and it was hardly going to be Hightower or Hooks turning evil all of a sudden, was it? It also has some legitimate high points. Lassard gets lots of screen time, there are some genuinely funny, well done slapstick moments, and the scene where one of the Wilson Heights gang asks Hightower if he's into heavy metal before dropping actual heavy metal on his head is just... Sorry, moving on. Sorry, moving on. The optics for City Under Siege aren't great. The first film from the franchise not to make it to number 1 at the North American box office, it failed to even make its budget back domestically. One critic compared it to suffering through an endless living death. It completed Police Academy's journey from raunchy comedy to kid-friendly slop, and it became the film that finally put the series underground. For at least 5 years. But does it deserve a slightly better rep? I think it does. Sure, it's silly and throwaway, but what would we expect from the 6th Police Academy film? But it's also structurally pretty tight, plays to the strengths of the remaining members of Lassard's squadron, and doesn't outstay its welcome. Coming at a time when the Police Academy brand was well and truly cooked, that's actually kind of impressive. Police Academy 6 brought a streamlined crew back from the beach to solve the case of a trio known as the Wilson Heights Gang, who are being directed by a mysterious figure to commit crimes across the city. I honestly think if someone without prior knowledge of Police Academy evaluated City Under Siege on its merits, they'd be hard-pressed not to conclude that it was one of the series' strongest. How good that actually makes it as a movie is up for debate, of course, but 0% on the tomato meter. Not for me. Call me crazy, tell me I've had one too many at the Blue Oyster Bar, but I scored this as my second favourite Police Academy film. It's tight, with very little pointless time wasting, and the big action set piece is strong. There was a clear back to basics approach here, which came far too late to save the franchise as a whole, but it makes this one of the most rewatchable additions decades later. Harris, Proctor and Lassard all get plenty of screen time. The other regulars largely have something to actually do. Renter Mahoney, Matt McCoy, is noticeably less annoying than his debut in Assignment Miami Beach. This one quietly has a lot going for it. Some of you rank Part 6 highly too, with a number of first or second place finishes in your lists. The fact that an equal percentage of your votes had City Under Siege towards the bottom of the list though, has ended up being its downfall in terms of a top 3 position on the chart. But when it comes to City Under Siege, the overwhelming dislike on Metacritic, the absolutely brutal reviews both then and now, the perception as a franchise destroyer, I think it's all really harsh. It might sound like I'm damning it with faint praise, but this is not that bad. And any film that features Michael Winslow's genuinely great Jimi Hendrix impression, guitar feedback and 70s wig and all, deserves at least a few minutes of your time on a rainy Sunday afternoon. You know what I miss? Chart shows on TV. Here in the UK, back in the day, Top of the Pops would be a weekly appointment for generations of music fans. You didn't even have to like the music in the charts. The very charts themselves were the draw. I don't think we really appreciated how good we had it until it was gone. But it wasn't just Top of the Pops. ITV's brilliantly named The Chart Show, MTV's Euro Top 20, CD UK, the chart sections on movies, games and videos, TRL on tape delay from America, and the short-lived, quickly forgotten UK version. Man, I'd stay up late just to watch Barry Norman run down whichever top 10 he was doing that week on BBC Film insert year here. Beyond the telly, I'd listen to Radio 1 for the Top 40 chart show every Sunday and then record my own chart show with 2 stereos. I really do miss those days. But if you don't want to miss a thing, then you can help make sure you see every new Culture Slice release by subscribing and turning notifications on, liking, sharing, hitting the hype button and commenting, even if it's abuse, also helps the channel out a lot. And if you want to go even further, then you can become a Club Slice channel member. It's still number 1, it's Top of the Pops. I mean Culture Slice. It's Culture Slice. Moving on. Now let's get back to our very own chart show countdown as we head feet first and half naked into the top 3. All aboard! Number 3. It's the second highest grosser, it's the second highest rated by the critics, and it's the first time the recruits got a taste of hitting the beat. But in something of an upset, it's only managed to make it to number 3 in our chart. It's Police Academy 2, Their First Assignment. Released in March 1985, things in the Police Academy world had taken a turn by Part 2. Rather than being a scrappy, low expectations underdog like the first film, this sequel was now a major release for Warner Brothers, with genuine expectations behind it and a studio suddenly realizing what it had on its hands. And largely, it lived up to the execs' expectations. It did pretty well in both your votes and my rankings too, which both had it firmly in the upper half. More than 90% of the public vote charts had it in the top 3 or 4 films, but hardly any had it in top spot, which perhaps tells its own story. There are issues in Police Academy 2 when viewed again, seeds of larger problems to come for the series, and the vibe score in particular ended up putting paid to Part 2's chances of finishing in our top 2. Taking the recruits out of the academy, Their First Assignment told the story of, their first assignment? As the new officers team up with Force veterans to try to stop a crime wave driven by Zed's gang, the Scullions. There were a whole host of debutantes and a distinct lack of both Harris and Callahan, but overall, they just about managed to hold it all together. But it's not all plain sailing. Art Matrano's Mauser is fine as the authority figure, but he's no G.W. Bailey. Howard Hesseman as Lassard's brother Eric should work, but ends up falling a bit flat. And the large majority of the more experienced partners they introduce are kind of dull and never to return again. There are plus points. Tackleberry and Kirkland's romance is a highlight. Bobcat Goldthwait's arrival as Zed brings one of the Academy's most memorable characters, and Sweet Chuck makes his debut too. Their scenes are really the highlight, but there is enough positive momentum to carry through the movie. But something feels different overall, and the vibe is functional rather than particularly exciting. A fact reflected in our fairly low score on this metric. The look of the film shifts, feeling flatter, with more of a TV sitcom feel, and it moves away from the raunchier, slightly more grounded comedy of Part 1. This appears to have largely been intentional. The creative team was overhauled after Part 1's director Hugh Wilson left to make singing cowboy epic Rustler's Rhapsody, with the megaphone handed over to Jerry Paris, and the focus became more on broader comedy than filthier hijinks. It works at times, less so at others, but the movie was a hit regardless, so I guess the strategy has to be considered a success from that perspective. It doesn't seem like it was an entirely happy camp during production, however, and watching it again you can kind of sense that. Hesseman refused to return for Part 3 and regretted taking the job, indicative of on-set problems between the old and new cast members, with some of the original actors reportedly unhappy that their screen time was being gobbled up by debutantes. You can feel that tension in the finished film. The charm is still there, but it's not always organic. Their first assignment ends up a strange dichotomy, a police academy paradox if you will. This is a competently made, genuinely solid entry in the series, but it doesn't pull me back in to rewatch it in the same way some of the later, objectively more incoherent and messy installments somehow do. As much as it's one of the better movies of the 7, Police Academy 2 is, in the end, just another movie. Number 2. In second place with a surprisingly high total score of 22 points comes Police Academy 4: Citizens on Patrol. Released in 1987, this felt like the film where the dam really burst for critical analysis of the series. It became the first entry to land a 0% Rotten Tomatoes score, the movie where, as Empire Magazine's review puts it, the rot set in. It still hit number 1 at the box office, but the likes of Gutenberg and Goldthwait were out after this one, and in many ways, it marked the end of a Police Academy era. So how exactly did COP make it to number 2 on the chart? Well, to attempt to sum it up, I think it boils down to this. They absolutely threw the kitchen sink at this movie, and not just in the hot air balloon climax. Telling the story of the implementation of Lasard's COP program, with the original graduates now training a brand new group of civilian recruits, the 4th Police Academy film saw the triumphant return of G.W. Bailey for the first time since the original movie. It was also the film debut of David Spade as the world's least threatening street punk, actual Sharon Stone turns up as Mahoney's new love interest, and Tony Hawk and the Bones Brigade appear as skateboarding body doubles. It's the only film which sees Harris, Sweet Chuck and Zed coexist, something Police Academy movies could have done with a lot more of, and Zed gets his own, pretty well done romance with new character Laura. So putting the quality of the finished film aside, you have to say that the cast for Citizens on Patrol is peak Police Academy. It's arguably the strongest of the entire series on paper, and after much internal debate, I ended up awarding it the maximum 7 points in that category. It's also part of the reason why Citizens on Patrol scores highly on the rewatchability factor. There was a time when it would seemingly turn up every weekend on Channel 5 here in the UK, and almost inevitably, I'd end up staying to watch the whole thing, fully aware that it's objectively not particularly great. The Washington Times review noted that number 4 isn't really a film, it's more like a long trailer, and they meant it as a bad thing, but actually, for longevity purposes, it's kind of worked in Citizens on Patrol's favour. The strange, almost unexplainable power of Police Academy. And it seems like quite a few of you agreed. Ranked as the 3rd best film overall in the public vote, it didn't feature at the bottom of a single one of your charts and was in the top half of more than 50% of them. In the second No Laughing Matter, I gave a fairly damning perspective on Citizens on Patrol. And at least some of that still stands. This isn't a good movie in the traditional sense of like, it's particularly well made, or the script is notably clever, or anything like that, but it unquestionably captures a specific moment in time in pop culture. And honestly, seeing it again for this video, I found my opinion mellow somewhat. It's no masterpiece, but it brings VHS memories flooding back. The fourth film is also continually rewindable, quality control achieved or not, thanks to its easy breezy tone, the so 80s it hurts montages, and some unique moments in Police Academy history. It's an era-defining film, for better or worse. It also features an opening title sequence that serves as something of a music video for Michael Winslow's Citizens on Patrol theme song, possibly the most 1987 recording ever created, a song that somehow inspired Steve Guttenberg to do this. Yep, the vibes are pretty strong with this one. Number 1. You wanted the best, you got the best, it's Kiss. Sorry, I mean it's Police Academy 1, Police Academy. It's the original, and objectively, it's the top of the pops. Achieving a total of 27 points out of a possible 28, number 1 in both your votes and my own ranking, it's fair to call this a runaway winner. Released in 1984, one of Hollywood's finest ever years, the film that launched the entire franchise took more from the lineage of Animal House and Porky's than it did from the family-friendly territory the later movies would drift into. It mixes a smattering of social commentary whilst introducing an endearing ragtag bunch of characters, from Hooks wanting to be respected, to Mahoney wanting to dodge legal trouble, to Callahan wanting to uphold old-school academy standards, to Karen Thompson wanting to escape her privilege bubble, to Fackler wanting to escape, his wife. Everyone has a clear and understandable motivation for being at the academy. Even the higher-ups aren't yet caricatures. They aren't just comic devices stumbling from scene to scene. The film skates a fine line by being funny but not ridiculous, and also genuinely endearing. I mean, take Hightower. In part 1, he's a polite florist with real emotional shading and a compelling character arc about belonging and proving your worth. Before too long in the sequels, he's become just the huge guy who lifts things. Something was lost in this series along the way, and this is coming from someone who is an unapologetic Police Academy apologist. The first film also confronts social issues, as much as a bawdy comedy from 1984 can do. Those who spew racially insensitive or uninformed rhetoric are made to eat their words, often literally. Its heart is in the right place, even if it is very much an R-rated comedy made in the early 1980s. And that R-rated comedy is properly funny at times. The scene where the friendly ends up the Sard's during the podium speech, and he thinks it's actually Mahoney who gave him the That has to be the funniest thing Police Academy has ever produced, right? George Gaines' performance here was flawless and demonstrates why he managed to always rise above the material in Police Academy films, even when that material had dropped off a cliff. It's great work from Steve Guttenberg too. It really is a brilliant scene. I find it so interesting that Michael Winslow, Steve Guttenberg and others from the cast and crew had talked about how nobody expected this movie to do much, that the fact that it made $150 million in cinemas came out of the blue, because to me, seeing it again, this felt like an obvious hit, especially if you consider pop culture in the glorious times of 1984. It's also a movie that I think has become increasingly underrated in the decades that followed, damned by its association to some of the later films that followed in its wake. A worthy number 1. Revisiting the Police Academy films again, I'm reminded why I find this franchise so strange and fascinating. A genuinely strong first installment created a series that made lots of money but drifted away from living up to its true potential. With that said, there were peaks as well as the many troughs. Even in the rough patches too, there is still something there that keeps you coming back. From the moment Robert Falk's legitimately brilliant theme tune hits, you're locked in. Or at least I am. And if you've got this far in the video, maybe you feel the same way too. And that strange magical hold is still alive more than 40 years on from that first movie's release. I'll sometimes see photos of the remaining cast members appearing together at reunions, taking place somewhere nowhere near where I live in the UK, and occasionally even featuring actual Steve Guttenberg. And every time, part of me wishes I'd been organised enough to be there, because however you'd rank the Police Academy movies, and despite all their flaws, it's clear that these films mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I'm sure there's one in the schedule again on some random TV channel any day now, and I'm almost certain I'll end up watching it. It's a film series for all seasons, although exactly which season Mission to Moscow belongs in, I'm still not entirely sure. Long live Police Academy.
Boy, when Marge first told me she was going to the police academy, I thought it'd be fun and exciting, you know, like that movie, Spaceballs. But instead, it's been painful and disturbing like that movie Police Academy.